Thank you, sir. A very good evening to everyone. I, Anmol Kaur, research scholar of USLLS, take this privilege to warmly welcome all of our esteemed guests and delegates on the occasion of inaugural webinar of Legal Entrepreneurship and Incubation Cell on the theme Legal Entrepreneurship in New India, conducted by University School of Law and Legal Studies, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University. Before we proceed, I would humbly request all the presenters and participants to keep yourself muted for smooth conduct of the event. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the event. Till then, the audience can post their questions in the chat box. I begin this program by offering sincere and heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Vice Professor Dr. Mahesh Verma, who is Padma Shri as well as BC Roy awardee. We are equally thankful to our registrar, Mr. Ravi Rajat sir, for giving us this platform to conduct this program. The Legal Entrepreneurship and Incubation Cell is the brainchild of USLLS under the leadership of Professor Dr. Amar Pal Singh, Dean, and faculty coordinators Dr. Anuradha Jha and Dr. Zubair Ahmed Khan. The aim of this cell is to amalgamate legal knowledge with the knowledge of the business. We are living at a time where conventional is not the norm anymore. Innovation is the key to success, and at this cell, we are trying to empower our law students with the ability to drive through the cutthroat competition and become legal entrepreneurs. To welcome is to show honor, to welcome is to establish integrity. I now invite Professor Dr. A.P. Singh Sir, Dean, USLLS, to welcome the dignitaries we have on our panel today. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Anmol. Thank you so much. Respected Shri Pawan Duggal ji, Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap, Mr. Tanuj Kalia ji, my learned faculty colleagues from law school and other schools of the university, and my young student friends. It's a proud privilege for me to welcome three very eminent guests and speakers today on the eve of this inaugural webinar on legal entrepreneurship in New India. Shri Dr. Pawan Duggal ji is someone who needs no introduction. In fact, all the three speakers are people who need no introduction. Everybody is known to the entire legal community for that purpose. But nevertheless, for the benefit of our young friends, I will say a few words. Pawan Duggal ji, who is an international cyber law expert and an advocate of the Supreme Court of India. In fact, he has worked with Doordarshan as well at one point of time and is a chairman of International Commission on Cyber Security Laws. He has published extensively several books, ebooks, articles on cyberspace, internet, World Wide Web, and so on and so forth. So it's a pleasure for us to welcome you with us this evening. Thank you for being with us, sir. Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap is Joint Director, National Institute of Labor Economics, Research and Development, associated with Niti Aayog. She is a PhD in Applied Economics and is a prolific writer on economic issues and has got published extensively in India and abroad. Her passion for learning and research is evident from the fact that she has been associated with a lot of academic institutions and has been teaching regularly for close to 15 years. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. We welcome you on behalf of USLLS.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Tanuj Kalia is somebody who is known to every law student. In fact, as we say, a person is known by the product he makes. If that is true, then Tanuj Kalia's name is something which is a household name for every law student. In fact, his website Loctopus is something where you see you get almost everything relating to every bit of information that you require for the purpose of a law student and his career. Mr. Tanuj Kalia's story is a very inspiring story. I was reading it. I see a very young friend. See, the founder of Loctopus. He has graduated from NUJS Kolkata and has been an eminent blogger, is an author of several books, including a book, Law as a Career. For young friends, Tanuj Kalia's name is something that will be a sort of, you see, star in the the firmament of Indian legal scholarship. Thank you, Mr. Tanuj, for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you,
I
sir,
once
for having me.
again, on behalf of University School of Law and Legal Studies, IP University, I welcome all the three eminent guests, my faculty, learned faculty colleagues, and student friends once again. Thank you so much. Over to you, Anmol.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to enlighten the audience about our first speaker for the day, Dr. Pawan Duggal. Some of his abundant of achievements have already been highlighted by Professor Dr. AP sir, and some more are here as well. Dr. Duggal is a cyber law expert and an advocate at the Supreme Court of India. I would like to highlight very few of his abundant achievements. As a practicing advocate in the Supreme Court of India, Dr. Duggal has made an immense impact with an international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cyber security law, artificial intelligence law, and e-commerce laws. Dr. Duggal has been acknowledged as one of the top 4 cyber lawyers around the world. He is the founder and chairman of International Commission on Cyber Security. He is also the president of cyberlaws.net and has been working in the pioneering area of cyber law, cyber security law, and mobile laws. His achievements include conducting 44 online courses at Cyber Law University, which have been subscribed by more than 25,500 students from 172 countries, speaking 52 national languages with excellent ratings. He is a member of ICT Policy and Governance Working Group of the UN ICT Task Force. He has been invited to be an associated fellow of the Center for Asia Pacific Technology Laws and Policy at Singapore. He is a member of Panel for Arbitrators of the Regional Center for Arbitration, Kuala Lumpur, and Asian Domain Name Dispute Resolution Center at Hong Kong. He has spoken at over 2,000 conferences, seminars, and workshops in the last 2 decades, and has lectured extensively in select law colleges. As a writer, he has made his mark with 152 books on various aspects of law in the last 20 years. He has contributed a continuing weekly column on diverse aspects of law titled Brief Cases to the Economic Times for almost a decade. With this, I invite Sir to kindly address the gathering. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving me that very kind introduction. Distinguished jurists, judicial minds, Dr. Singh, other professors, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends. Today, the clock is ticking. And with each ticking moment is now a new fear. The fear that the third wave is coming. The fear gets more enhanced because Australia has begun to start imposing lockdowns in anticipation of the third wave. And people have already in India gone ahead on a revenge tourism kind of a binge. You all want to go ahead and visit as many places, visit as many people, because you feel that the third wave in any case is coming. So we will still be locked inside. So let's take this forward. That's one aspect of the pandemic. But then there's another aspect of the pandemic which has completely changed the world upside down. And this is the fact that internet has now ceased to be a luxury. Internet has now become a central lifeline of our day-to-day lives. Well, prior to the pandemic, India had the Digital India program, and we were encouraging more and more Indians to come on to the digital bandwagon. And the Digital India program of the government of India made substantial movements forward. But nothing could beat the pandemic in terms of the impact that the pandemic would have upon propelling massive adoption of internet and the electronic ecosystem. So today, when I look at the time frame within the pandemic, I realize the pandemic has been the #1 biggest public health emergency that we have seen in our living lives. It's the biggest event that we have seen in the 21st century. And it's this very event that, apart from having a public health emergency ramification, is also having a very, very positive element and contribution. This is waking people up to the immense potential of cyberspace, the internet, and the World Wide Web. So from a luxury today, internet has become a necessity. What India would have normally achieved in terms of digitization in 10 years, India has achieved it in less than 1 year. Again, thanks to the pandemic. And with these new kinds of changed ecosystems, certain ground realities are becoming more critical. #1, that we have entered into the data economy, where the data is the new oil of the data economy. #2, we, with the advent of COVID-19, have also seen irreversible changes happening in cyberspace. #3, the golden age of cybercrime has already begun with the coming of COVID-19. Why? Because cybercrime was here for the last 50 years of the existence of the internet. But the way cybercrime has grown in the last year and a half during the time of the pandemic has been unprecedented and phenomenal, to say the least. We've seen the trinity of cybercrimes emerging at the topmost of people's attention, whether it's phishing, identity theft, or online financial frauds or ransomware. On top of it, the world is losing money left, right, and center. The year 2020, world lost more than $6 trillion thanks to cybercrime. Come 2021, and we are going to be expected to be losing more than $8 trillion thanks to cybercrime. #4, we are all now working towards a new kind of a cyber age that's waiting for us. I've recently written a book called New Cyber World Order Post-COVID-19, where I've very studiously examined the impact of COVID-19 on cyberspace. And I've come to the conclusion, and I've argued in this book, that by the time nations are victorious against the current and subsequent wave of COVID-19 infections, we will enter into a new cyber age. A new cyber world order will be awaiting us, where states will become very powerful, where cybercrime will be our default option, where increasing cybersecurity breaches will be our daily companion, and where there are increasingly going to be interferences in our digital enjoyment of digital rights and liberties. Now, that's a new age that we are currently going in. So with these kinds of ground path-making changes that's happening, it does often raises the question, is there something positive about the pandemic? Because everything about pandemic is negative, whether it's deaths, whether it's pain, whether it's suffering, whether it's losses to cybercrime, whether it's cybersecurity breaches or the like. Well, I can say one thing, that the most positive contribution of the pandemic has been that it has propelled and forced people to think on their feet. And it has forced people to apply their mind on how they can use the paradigm of internet for the purposes of coming up with new innovative approaches, methodologies, products, services. See, India has been a land which has got 5,000 years of civilization documented. It's a land that's shown the world the way forward as regards culture, as regards philosophy, as regards the development of mathematical concepts, and even as regards the advent of the values of tolerance, of nonviolence, and a variety of other human elements. But I think there's one thing that's emerged in India after the Indian independence that has become very topical of all of us. I call it the Indian Jugaad School of Management. Indians have loved to do Jugaad and are continuing to do Jugaad. Well, I tried to find out the dictionary meaning of the term Jugaad. No official dictionary has defined the term Jugaad, but it's just the innovative approach of a person to come up with innovative thought processes and response mechanisms to deal with difficult or challenging situations or challenges. And Indians excel in Jugaad. So it's but natural to expect that when Indians have been huddled inside, thanks to the pandemic, in the national lockdown, and they've been forced to rethink their strategies, they've applied Jugaad to now quickly start coming up with new manifestations of entrepreneurship. So consequently, what under normal circumstances we've not seen, we've seen different layers, manifestations, avatars, and orientations of entrepreneurship that we have seen specifically mushrooming and sprouting since the last almost year and a half. But amongst all kinds of entrepreneurship, every entrepreneurship is special. But when we talk of legal entrepreneurship, we are actually going in an area which is pretty much barren, pretty much virgin to say the least vis-a-vis India. The topic today is on legal entrepreneurship in New India. Clearly, India is getting new. Yes, we are losing money. We're losing people. But yes, we are also gaining from our mistakes. We are learning from our past experiences. And we are moving forward to become more resilient as we go forward. No wonder legal entrepreneurship as a concept has begun to start getting a lot of currency in our day-to-day lives. And rightfully so. Let's quickly realize that the legal profession was the profession that changed the least in the last 200 years prior to the pandemic. And I can tell you the pandemic has been one particular incident that has forced this legal profession to change the most during the time of the pandemic. And the legal entrepreneurship waves, trends that we are beginning to see are also a manifestation in this regard. So a couple of things happened which we could never really think of. Way back in 2011, I filed the first case of an online, an e-case before an e-filing before the Delhi High Court. I still remember the time because the judges said, wow, we haven't seen something like this. You're filing your entire case on a pen drive and on a CD. What for? And we thought, that's going to usher in new things. Yes, over a period of time, we saw different high courts, the Supreme Court toying up with different aspects of e-courts. But come the pandemic, and we realized that things changed completely. Almost instantaneously, the judiciary and the legal circles shifted on to the online ecosystem. So video conferencing, which was earlier just restricted to certain limited usages in the judicial proceedings, became the de facto norm of the day. Today, all hearings across the world, across the country, across the various states and courts take place on video conferencing. And initially, we also saw some very interesting things. During the early days of these video conferencing during the pandemic, we saw a lawyer appearing in his banyan before the court, thinking that his camera is off when the camera was on. We've seen some hilarious situations where legal professionals have been caught off guard. But over a period of time, there's been a massive maturity. But while the shift to video conferencing is only one element of the legal evolution as I go forward, I quickly realized that the legal entrepreneurship has immense number of new colors and contours to add as far as the landscape is concerned. And why not? Because now with everything coming on the electronic ecosystem, it's but natural that legal entrepreneurship must now start exploring and experimenting with new approaches, offerings, services, platforms, methodologies, and other mindsets as we go forward. I remember the time, when I wrote my first book more than 20 years back. And that is the time where we only used to have physical books. So as the concept of ebooks arrived and I started writing some ebooks, a lot of lawyers said, why do you write an ebook? Who reads an ebook? Strange has become the time today. We like to read everything on our computer, on our mobile. Yes, there are a lot of lawyers who are still, traditionally mindseted, in the sense they want the hard copy of the book with them. And clearly so, the smell of that particular law book tends to take you to a different world altogether. It tends to create the right aromas in which your mind and its juices start watering down. But clearly, now has become the time where we want almost instantaneously all our information in the electronic ecosystem. And therefore, having our books on our computers, on our mobiles is a normal thing. But then, is that alone what legal profession has to do vis-a-vis the electronic ecosystem? I don't think so. I think we are only beginning to see the tip of the iceberg. So if I was to write a book on, say, legal entrepreneurship in India by 2030, and if that book was to be, say, of 100 pages, then today in 2021 July, we would potentially be on the 6th or the 7th page of that book. Just to give you an inkling of how many more new developments that are going to take place in the area of legal entrepreneurship. So, and we have a number of very interesting things. We have a service that's come up in America, which is based on artificial intelligence, which is for lawyers and law firms. And all you need to do is to just put your facts of the case into the service and tell before which judge is the matter listed. And then the AI takes over. The artificial intelligence examines your facts, looks at the entire judgments passed by the said judge in his entire career, examines and analyzes that, and mixes and matches in the context of your particular case facts, and then comes up with suggestion of the likelihood of how the judge or the court is likely to proceed forward in your matter. And they have actually found out that their particular AI algorithm is a 96% accuracy algorithm. So that's a very scary picture, because if you're a judge and somebody, and more so an algorithm, can actually predict how you're going to decide in a particular matter, that can be very, very dangerous. But then that's yet another color of legal entrepreneurship as we go forward. I think in a country like India, where the legal profession has by and large been relegated only to courts, I see massive potential for legal entrepreneurship. I see new approaches coming in, and I see new methodologies by means of which the deprived have-nots, who have yet not been got effective access to effective justice, can actually help be leapfrogged onto the next level. And therefore, I see a lot of legal entrepreneurship being of direct value and utility, not just to lawyers in the bigger cities, in the high courts, but also to lawyers and the legal professions, and also the common man in smaller cities, mofussil towns, and even in rural areas. And ultimately, the idea is technology has to empower everyone. But while there are various colors and different kinds of new, shall I say, offerings that have begun to start coming up of entrepreneurship, we've begun seeing the emergence of new legal blogs, new legal websites, new legal offerings, new legal calendars, new legal reference materials, new platforms for potential moot courting, and a variety of other things. I think there's one common thread. They're all still trying to find out what is the demand. And on the basis of the demand, they're coming up with their own respective approaches and mechanisms. And that's a logical approach. But I want to take your attention today to something else which legal entrepreneurs in India must be conscious and careful about. And that is that when you are doing legal entrepreneurship in India, and in this new India that we are talking about, you will now increasingly only be doing work in the electronic format. You would only be working in the context of the internet or using the internet as a mechanism for delivery of your goods and services. So in a scenario, we have to realize one fundamental premise that a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs forget in the context of the internet. Internet as a phenomenon never sleeps. Internet as a paradigm never forgets. Let's not forget these two fundamental parameters as we go forward. And I can tell you, once we have these things very, very crystal clear, our approaches of what kind of legal entrepreneurship models, goods, services, platforms, or perspectives we want to adopt will start falling into place once these fundamental characteristics of the internet are put in place. Now, once you're doing legal entrepreneurship in India, you will have to quickly start realizing that your entrepreneurship efforts, goods, services, or offerings must be in sync with the law of the land. Now, you will say, look, you're talking about legal entrepreneurship. So it's bound to expect that your legal entrepreneur will be legally compliant. However, that expectation is not necessarily a natural corollary of what happens today. The reality is there are a lot of legal entrepreneurs who will end up offering new kinds of services, but do not focus on the legal protections, legal homeworks that they need to put in place. So all legal entrepreneurs in India who are trying to tie up with any legal entrepreneurship project or the other must keep some fundamental things in mind. Firstly, let's realize that all our legal entrepreneurship offerings, products, services will be using the internet, will be using the electronic ecosystem. In fact, if you're a legal entrepreneur, the chances are that every day you are likely to use any one or more of the 7 raw materials that exist in the digital ecosystem today. So you could potentially be using computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data and information in the electronic form. If you use any one of these 7 raw materials, then please be mindful of the fact that your activities are going to be governed under the Indian cyber law. And that's why cyber law becomes more important. See, Indian cyber law began accidentally as just a very, very small subject-specific legislation. It was only meant for promoting e-commerce in the country 21 years back when we enacted the Information Technology Act 2000. Even the Parliament of India had no idea that this legislation that they are actually passing is going to become a path-breaking legislation in the coming times. And as time passed by, this legislation emerged from becoming just a sectoral specific e-commerce legislation into becoming India's de facto law on the electronic format. Section 81 of the IT Act says that the Information Technology Act 2000 is a special law, and the provisions of this law prevail over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. And over the period of time, this law has become India's mother legislation for everything electronic. I will even go further and say that the Information Technology Act is one of the top 3 legislations in the history of independent India. The other 2 being the Constitution of India and the Indian Penal Code. Why? Because no other legislation has had so much of an impact upon the affairs and the conducts and working of people as the Information Technology Act. And the pandemic has pushed us further in a direction where our reliance upon the electronic ecosystem is going to be a given default. Even if the pandemic subsides, even if things come back to normal, the work from home will still continue. These intrinsic changes and intrinsic reliances on the electronic ecosystem will still continue. So if you're a legal entrepreneur in India, please realize that your activities are going to be governed under the Indian cyber law. Which means what? Which means that you will have to comply with this law. Now, it's not natural to expect that if you are a legal entrepreneur, your legal offerings must be legally compliant. But I want to go a step further. Apart from normal compliance, this law has now come up with something new and unique, which you as a legal entrepreneur need to know. When you are a legal entrepreneur, and when you are having your own legal entrepreneurship outfit, you are getting covered under this Indian cyber law in a unique and distinctive capacity. When you're offering your services using computers, computer systems, electronic ecosystem, then you become an intermediary under the Indian cyber law. Which means what? Which means that you are somebody who's in between. Is that all? I don't think so. Let's take your attention to section 21W of the Information Technology Act 2000. This section says, and I quote, intermediary with respect to any particular electronic record means any person who on behalf of another person receives, stores, or transmits any particular electronic record or provides service with respect to that record, and includes telecom service providers, internet service providers, web hosting companies, online auction portals, online payment sites, cyber cafes, search engines, and online marketplaces. That's a huge definition. So once you're a legal entrepreneur, do you become an intermediary? The answer is a crystal clear yes, because you're providing services, and today these services are being provided in the digital form, and you are effectively dealing also with third-party data. So you're bound to become a network service provider, and hence you would qualify as an intermediary. Now, once you become an intermediary, then as a legal entrepreneur in New India, you will have to now comply with the IT Act and the IT rules and regulations. Section 79 of the IT Act gives some special status to these legal entrepreneurs in India in their capacity as intermediaries. Remember, in the epic Mahabharata comes the Gita discourse. In the Gita discourse, Lord Krishna has one central message to Arjuna. Lord Krishna says, come inside my Sharan and I will protect you. That's the fundamental message of Gita, which has been encapsulated under the Indian cyber law, being the Information Technology Act 2000. This law says under section 79 to all these legal entrepreneurs and all intermediaries in India that comply with my law, comply with my provisions, and I will guarantee you certain unique immunity. Immunity in the sense that anybody in the world will be able to sue you, but you cannot be sent to jail, number one. And number two, you cannot be forced to pay 1 rupee damages by way of compensation. That's provided you comply with this law. So effectively, this law is giving you a kind of a security shield, a suraksha kavach, and asking you to go ahead in your legal endeavors as a legal entrepreneur, so long as you comply with the cyber law and its parameters. Please take the benefit of the statutory exemption from legal liability that section 79 of the Indian cyber law has specifically provided. Now, when I read section 79(2)(c) of the IT Act, it is effectively asking all legal entrepreneurs in India to exercise due diligence while they discharge their obligations under the law. The parameters of due diligence have been defined by the government under various rules, including the Information Technology Rules 2011, and now the recently formed Information Technology Rules 2021. Now, these rules have given various parameters of due diligence, and it's advisable that all legal entrepreneurs must do their documented due diligence so as to be on the right side of the law and so as to take this suraksha kavach, so that when they are in their initial bubbling times, they're bound to be legal issues, challenges, problems. If they can hide behind this statutory exemption from legal liability, then to a large extent, their businesses are not going to be impacted. But if they choose to be adventurous and choose not to comply with the law, despite being a legal entrepreneur, then only they themselves will have to be blamed and no one else. Because ignorance of law is no excuse in the eyes of law. And if you don't comply with the law, you're ready to burn your fingers. And you know the consequences of burning your fingers and exposing yourself to legal consequences. So the IT Rules 2021, for example, have now completely changed the legal landscape for all legal entrepreneurs in India. So if you're a legal entrepreneur, you're now required to do numerous compliances. You have to have in place your terms and conditions, your rules and regulations, your privacy policy, where you must specifically stipulate what kind of activities are not to be done by visitors coming on your websites, your platforms, your mobile applications. And if despite your so stipulations, some persons still go ahead and violate, no problem. Then they become liable under the law and not you. Similarly, you're now required to put in reasonable security practices and procedures for enforcing the security of your data and your networks. And that effectively means that you will have to now be compliant with ISO 27001 and its parameters on cybersecurity in this new age India. And if you don't comply, and as a result of your failure, there's negligence and there's a cybersecurity breach, then remember, the law is going to make you liable for all the breaches that have happened in respect of third-party data. So let's take the recent example of Air India. Air India gave its data for third-party outsourcing to one of its service providers, being SITA in the Switzerland. SITA got hacked, and not only Air India's data, but more than a dozen odd airlines' data got impacted and breached. Now for that, now Air India is begun to start facing legal consequences. There's a report that a person has already started litigation against Air India because his or her name was in the said leaked list, and that caused damage. So when you are a legal entrepreneur in India, you have to realize that you will effectively be dealing with two distinctive kinds of sands in your hand. I call it the data sand. Why? Because you'll effectively be dealing with data. There will be one color of data sand, which will be your data. Let's say it's the red sand that you're dealing with. No problem. It's a sand that belongs to you. The data belongs to you. So no problem. You can deal, handle, process it in any manner whatsoever. But simultaneously, in your bucket, there'll also be a second sand, maybe a black sand. That's black sand maybe could potentially be the data that doesn't belong to you, but belongs to third parties. So for your red sand data, which is your data, you're free to do whatever you want to do. But the moment you deal with black sand data, which is the specific issue of third-party data, you will have to be more careful. You'll have to put in appropriate mechanisms, processes, and procedures to withstand these kinds of data from potential breaches and cybersecurity attacks that are happening. And cybersecurity attacks are happening left, right, and center. Don't think that we are going to be completely lucky all our lives. We may never be lucky. In fact, I always believe that there are two kinds of people in the world. One, who know that they have become a victim of cybercrime, and two, who do not know that they have become a victim of cybercrime. So if you're a legal entrepreneur, let's take it a given fact that you will be hacked. Your data is going to be potentially targeted. The question is, how quickly can you come back with appropriate mechanisms to come back to a state of normalcy? What kind of cybersecurity practices and procedures have you actually adopted for the purposes of protecting not only your own data, but also third-party data? Those are some fundamental issues that the law wants you to address. If you address them properly, the law gives you that Suraksha Kavach and statutory exemption from legal liability. If you fail or do not comply with all parameters, that is going to be exposing you to unnecessary legal consequences, both civil and criminal. And now the IT rules 2021 have made life more difficult for legal entrepreneurs in India. Rule 7 of the IT rules 2021 says that, of course, the IT rules 2021 are mandatory and have to be mandatorily complied with by all legal entrepreneurs. But if you don't comply, then be prepared for two kinds of legal consequences. Number one, be prepared that you're going to be stripped of your statutory exemption from legal liability that you enjoy under Section 79 of the IT Act. And number two, be prepared that you are liable to be punished for various offenses under the Information Technology Act 2000 and the Indian Penal Code. So for the first time, the criminal liability doors have been specifically opened up. So if you're a legal entrepreneur and you're not going to be careful while dealing with third-party data, it could even effectively mean jail time for you as a legal entrepreneur. It could effectively mean imprisonment for the top management of the company. Because if there's a contravention or violation by the legal entrepreneurship unit or startup or a company or that legal entity, the law says every person responsible for running the day-to-day affairs of such an entity shall also be deemed to be guilty of the said offense and shall be liable to be punished accordingly. So I think when there is so much of rain and noise, storm and lightning going all across, the more prudent approach is the conservative approach of trying to lie low, which is that go ahead and implement your legal entrepreneurship projects, mechanisms, plans to the hilt, but please ensure your compliance with applicable laws. There's an old saying in India, then when it's raining cats and dogs, or when there's a big storm, just lie close to the ground. Once the storm passes away, stand up and walk again. I think the similar wisdom has to be specifically instilled by the legal entrepreneurs, because India has become a very litigious society. And with the coming of pandemic, I'm now beginning to see a tsunami of litigation coming in by the time the pandemic comes to a close. You realize that in the pandemic, almost every dispute that's happening has an electronic evidence component. Do you realize that this electronic evidence becomes legally admissible? And you realize that in July 2020, the Supreme Court of India has come up with a constitutional bench judgment, effectively settling the law pertaining to electronic evidence in the country in the case of Arjun Pandit Rao Khotkar versus Kailash Ghorantyal. So by the time we are going to come to the close of the pandemic, and thereafter we are going to see a tsunami of litigation. So as a legal entrepreneur, you have to take that added precaution to ensure that you are compliant with the law, you are exposed to legal consequences to the lowest extent possible. Be prepared that you and your data is going to be targeted and hacked. Don't think the cyber attacks are only for governments or for big corporates. Today, a cyber attack is like a honeybee. It's going to go directly to the place where the pollens are there, where the honey is going to be there. So you, as a legal entrepreneur, is a very fertile target for being targeted, because your legal entrepreneurship entity or a business is likely to have a lot of unique kind of elements, unique data, and the ability of the cyber criminals to go ahead and hack your data and then sell it, monetize it, misuse it, both on the superficial net and on the dark net, is very, very probable. So take appropriate steps as a legal entrepreneur to focus on cybersecurity. Be on the right side of the law. Yes, it's correct. India at the time when we talk does not have a dedicated law on cybersecurity, but no problem. It's also correct that India does not have a national cybersecurity policy of 2013, which has remained a paper tiger and has not been implemented. It is also correct that India is pretty much behind the curve as far as other nations are concerned, because other nations have come up with dedicated laws on cybersecurity. Countries like China, Vietnam, Australia, Singapore, Thailand are countries that are moving ahead than India. Why? Because they've come up with dedicated laws on cybersecurity. India has not yet come up with those laws. But please understand, various aspects of cybersecurity are being covered under the existing cyber law and under existing notifications of the various statutory authorities. So be on the right side of the law. Try as far as possible to protect your data, third-party data. Be alive to the fact that cyber criminals are going to potentially target you and hack your systems and data. And therefore, start inculcating a culture of not just cybersecurity as a part of your day-to-day life, but also a culture of cyber resilience. See, cyber resilience becomes very relevant from a perspective of a legal entrepreneurship. You see, once you realize that you're going to be hit, then that's no brainer once you are hit. And there's no point crying or panicking once you get hit. Let's take it as a given default, you will be hit. The question is, how quickly can you come back to a state of normalcy after getting hit? That's the fundamental question. And therefore, I think it'll be imperative that the said legal entrepreneurs in India must inculcate cyber resilience as part of their day-to-day approaches as we move forward. And of course, be mindful of what's happening on the horizon. Be mindful of the fact that India already has presented the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 before the Parliament, and that the Parliament has already referred it to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, and that the Joint Parliamentary Committee, whose tenure has been extended to December 2021, is expected to come and give its report. And on that basis of the report, the government is going to come up with new amendments to the Personal Data Protection Bill, which could effectively become law very, very soon. And therefore, as a legal entrepreneur, if you're going to be dealing with third-party data, you will have to be mindful of the new changes on data protection that's happening and ensure that your activities are in compliance with those parameters as well. At the end of the day, it's more a question of having in place a holistic mindset. Your idea is yours. You're brilliant in what you're doing as a legal entrepreneur, but your ideas alone in order to be really successful, have to be watered appropriately, have to be appropriately supported by enabling legal frameworks. Unfortunately, that's one area that I find that the Indian ecosystem is not very well braced. We don't have any kind of enabling legal frameworks for entrepreneurs in general and legal entrepreneurs in particular. And I think it will really do a tremendous good to the ecosystem if the government comes up with more enabling legal frameworks to support the activities of these kinds of online legal entrepreneurship. All said and done, the future looks very bright. But please understand, it's also full of challenges. They say life is going to become very difficult after the pandemic comes to a close. More people have lost their jobs. More people will still lose their jobs. And economy will slowly come back to normalcy. In this ecosystem, the chances of innovation are going to be maximum, because more and more people, including legal entrepreneurs, would be called upon to innovate effectively and in a futuristic manner, using these newly emerging technologies so that they can create the maximum benefit and value addition for their users. And now with the coming onto the horizon, these newly emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, and quantum computing, legal entrepreneurs have got these new tools at their beck and call, which they can potentially use in their legal approaches, legal offerings, and legal products on their legal entrepreneurship startup issues. So it's a very fascinating time. And as a student, when I look at the way how this legal jurisprudence is evolving, all I can say is that we may be all sitting at home. We may be still very, very fearful. Yes, we may be acknowledging the fact that fear and panic have become our two constant companions during the pandemic. We may be acknowledging the fact that cyber criminals are weaponizing these fear and panic to target us. But while we are doing what we are doing, the ecosystem is growing. The opportunities for new offerings, new paradigms, and new phenomenons becoming new ground realities are already emerging. And I think legal entrepreneurs can play a remarkable role in this regard. To conclude, I can just say, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Those have to be the words of the legal entrepreneurs of India today. New India requires you, requires your skill sets, your innovations, your ingenuities, and more significantly, your dogged determination to make your idea of a legal entrepreneurship project a great success. It's a fascinating space. I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how legal entrepreneurs will start becoming a propelling catalyst force in the further growth of the Indian economy in the coming times. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you. And with that, over to Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, sir, for gracing us with your expert comments. Our next guest, Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap, is an academician with over 17 years of experience in the area of macroeconomics. She has done her PhD in applied economics from University of Lucknow. She is also the joint director of National Institute of Labor Economics Research and Development. It is an autonomous institute under NITI Aayog. During her tenure as an academician, she has been associated with some of the most reputed universities of the country, such as the University of Lucknow, Ansar University, Amity University, and Trinity Institute of Professional Studies. She also has abundant publications in the subject. I now would request ma'am to kindly address her views, or kindly share her views with the audience.
A very good evening to Dean, sir. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Ma'am, you are audible.
Hey,
You're
ma'am,
audible, ma'am.
please share the screen.
Yeah. A very good evening to Dean, sir, all esteemed faculty members, my co-panelists, and all participants. So it is indeed my privilege and pleasure to be part of this inaugural webinar organized by Legal Entrepreneurship and Incubation Cell. IP University. Let me start by thanking Dr. Anuradha Jha and the entire organizing team for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts on the subject, entrepreneurship, innovation, and policy environment. Uh, can you start the presentation from the very beginning, please? All our endeavors these days have a reference to COVID-19. And as we all know, we can call this current pandemic as a black swan event, because this unexpected and hard to predict event was not within the range of normal expectations. While the magnitude of human tragedy is still unknowable and outside the realm of our expertise, the economic and financial impact is coming into the view slowly. Organizations world over have now been impelled to reassess their business strategies in order to survive. New businesses can exist only if these are based on strategies to survive the present time. So before crisis of COVID-19, there have been two more examples in the history that have changed the course of entrepreneurship and doing business. One was the SARS pandemic of 2002-2004, and the other was the financial crisis of 2008. Both these events had created new fields of entrepreneurship, or you can say new ways of doing business. To give you an example, China, which was much impacted by SARS, witnessed a boom in e-commerce economy post that. Companies like Alibaba became big during these times. Whereas the financial crisis of 2008 gave rise to a new culture of sharing resources. Companies like Uber and Airbnb were born at that time. As compared to these two events, COVID-19 is way massive and no economy has been untouched by it. We have all been flooded with data on economic impact of the virus, and it has changed the business landscape forever. So to give you some figures here, the decline in economic growth has ranged from minus 4.5 to minus 6% in 2020, and only a partial recovery has been projected for 2021. Global trade has estimated to have fallen in 2020 and projected to grow by 8% in 2021. Emerging markets and developing economies, including China, which grew very slow in 2020 and is expected to grow at much faster in 2021. Other low economies are also expected to grow. However, all the figures predict a global economic slowdown. And besides slowdown, what is important is that the recovery is going to be very slow and painful. However, all is not lost, as the same situation has brought growth for some sectors and industries. For example, despite being hit hard by COVID-19, media industry has been able to survive. Amazon has been able to cope. Content production industry players like Netflix and Amazon have witnessed increase in their viewership. And we all know that popularities of Skype and Zoom have surged. So therefore, definitely COVID-19 has fostered a wave of innovation in the world of entrepreneurship. Therefore, what is needed is a careful planning for a career in entrepreneurship for youngsters. So when we talk about being successful in entrepreneurship, we must remember that there are few characteristics of inherent traits which are present in all entrepreneurs. So let me briefly highlight some of these characteristics for you all. Curiosity. We all know that people with entrepreneurial skills are supposed to be curious. They always seek new opportunities. They ask challenging questions. They are never afraid of change, and they always challenge the status quo. Second is structured experimentation. What is that? So when new opportunities arise, you must be prepared to seize them at the right moment. Hence, future entrepreneurs, whoever wants to become an entrepreneur, must have the ability to conduct some kind of market research and pilot tests to find out whether the ideas they have been thinking are worth pursuing or not. Third is adaptability. Adaptability for budding entrepreneurs, they need to adapt in a dynamic environment. They need to have that skill. So whenever the outside business environment changes, they need to adapt quickly. There are many examples to prove that entrepreneurs who possess this skill have survived in any crisis environment. I have discussed few success stories also ahead. Next is decisiveness. No, go back to the slide number 5, please. Yes, decisiveness. This is the ability to make challenging decisions. And yes, the decision that you take is not always going to be the correct one. So in case it fails or the outcome is not favorable, the entrepreneurs must have the ability to bravely take corrective actions. Confidence, of course, this is a very important ability because you are the best marketing tool for your business, and you must have the confidence to win over the investors and, of course, convince your customers. Team building. Teams drive a venture towards success, not an individual. So therefore, great teams of organizations are those which complement the abilities of an entrepreneur. And last is risk tolerance. We all know that some level of risks are imminent in any entrepreneurial venture. So risk tolerance means being comfortable with encountering some level of risk and also being prepared to minimize failure. Along with traits, let me also point out some critical skills which are needed to be a creative and innovative entrepreneur. One is the skill of pattern recognition. Pattern recognition, this is mainly related to data analytics. It refers to a skill of identifying patterns in data, in sales, your financial data, your consumer preferences, so that insights can be used to grow your business. Next is strategic thinking. This means the skills like analytical skills, communication, problem solving. Another very important and valuable skill is negotiation, which is used to make valuable collaborations in business. And lastly, growth mindset. Growth mindset means that the entrepreneur should always be ready to learn new skills and believe in continuous improvement. So therefore, being innovative and creative is one of the key skills for being a successful entrepreneur, more so in turbulent times like today. What we saw last year was when things became difficult with the onset of pandemic, the businesses continued to concentrate on things like pursuing already known existing opportunity spaces, conserving cash to minimize risk, or waiting, or just simply waiting till more clarity is achieved. However, this is not right approach because when faced with challenges, the leaders must take a more innovative approach and tackle the crisis head on. They should look at things like how to meet the changing consumer needs, identify and quickly address new opportunity areas, and ensure that resources of entrepreneurs are appropriately allocated. These are the steps that can help any business survive in the evolving landscape. This slide of evolving business landscape, this is based on a new research by IBM Institute for Business Value. It points out that business environment is completely altered now and of course will keep on evolving. First point in this particular evolvement of business environment is the digital transformation of businesses. Now, this was a priority even much before COVID-19. However, it has now accelerated and meets with less or no resistance across sectors. So leaders now find it easier to implement digital transformation in their businesses. Organizations world over have made big changes in their strategies, like shifting to more cloud-based activities, accelerated automation of processes, increased investments in technology, etc. Organizations now realize that besides technology, what is more important than technology or equally important is the human resources. They need to be sure that their people are as capable, as resilient, and as adaptable as their technologies for the long term. Hence, the ability to quickly adapt to change is now a valued competency. The research, particular research that I am talking about, showed that 3 in 4 executives believe that changed customer behavior is likely to continue post-pandemic, and therefore managing customer experiences will be a priority for them. These business leaders want to give the best online experiences to their customers. Thankfully, the research has also revealed that entrepreneurs or the business leaders are now prioritizing their operational capabilities over external growth. This suggests that businesses are taking the crisis as opportunity for transformation. Operational capabilities like cost management, cash flow management, liquidity management, cyber security, new product development, etc. are a priority now, as these things are going to ensure efficiency and growth in future. Businesses that are able to use this agile business environment for growth will survive in future, and those which are still waiting for things to go back to the so-called normal may not be able to survive and would regret. Next, please. You can skip this one. Next. Many of the changes in strategies that are being brought about have been necessitated by the changing circumstances. However, there are certain critical practices that have been prescribed even much before COVID-19 pandemic struck for innovation success. Now, McKinsey & Company, which is one of the top consulting firms, has listed some guidelines for the companies. So understanding them will help you understand what are the critical practices that the business leaders must follow to keep on innovating. First is discover. Discover means that companies should invest in rediscovering the trends. That is what matters to the consumer now and what is the impact on their business. To give you an example, brick and mortar retail may never return back to its days of glory as e-commerce becomes the mainstay. So such information can be readily used to make new products, new services, give new customer experiences, develop new business models, etc. Next is choose. This involves decision to reallocate resources towards the best opportunities. For example, a company which may have planned to launch a range of gym products during the pandemic may like to shift to building its direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, witnessing the changing circumstances in the pandemic. Next is evolve. Evolve means to be prepared to evolve with the changing situation. As we already pointed out that maybe the customers won't like to return to offline mode of transaction. Even in China, the offline transactions dropped 70% during lockdown and only half of the drop returned post-lockdown. IBM's research too shows that firms are now preparing for a permanent change in scenario. Next slide, please. Next is accelerate. So during the crisis times, the businesses must keep in mind that the pace, the speed at which the businesses need to bring out new ideas into the market must be accelerated. An example in this regard is that in support of the COVID response, many industrial companies in India had started producing ventilators, masks, sanitizers, etc. Scale. When the pace of new product and services being launched in the market increases, the supply chains must also keep pace with the growing demand. Last is mobilize. For success of innovation, it is always important for companies to instill an agile culture and working model to mobilize innovation. For example, during COVID times, the pharma industry became allied to share compounds and facilities in search of COVID therapies. Even competitors came together for common goals. Having discussed why is it important for business leaders to be innovative and what qualities they must possess, it would be good to provide evidence in form of few success stories. The stories that I have chosen here are of women entrepreneurs who chose to be creative, innovative, and seize the crisis. Journey Weavers, this company was founded in 2015 and was offering customized and experiential trips for families, milestone occasions, etc. However, post-pandemic, it witnessed that many clients started asking for refunds for their advanced bookings because travel became difficult. So this young entrepreneur, Shalini Raj, creatively pivoted the startup into a wedding-focused startup for COVID times, which organizes end-to-end weddings with 50 to 60 attendees in place. Suhani Mohan, the entrepreneur of Saral Designs, was a company founded to provide affordable and hygienic sanitary napkins to lower-income families. This involved itself into a company producing 3-ply surgical masks to help frontline workers during the pandemic. Similarly, Next slide, please. Similarly, when there was a young entrepreneur, Rakhi's maternity fashion brand saw zero business activity for more than 2 months during the pandemic. She chose to accelerate to enter market with new products and started the brand in clothes. So this is what she produced was a reusable and washable overall, which can be used by domestic workers in societies, beauty salon, hotel chains, and obviously she saw a new demand for our products. So these were the few examples of how creative entrepreneurs succeeded in shifting their business models. Now, shifting our focus from business environment in general to that of legal industry, in this slide, I have highlighted some points on what is changing for the legal industry. And all these changes are not sudden, but evolving since pre-COVID times. From practice to skill. This means that legal industry is changing from a lawyer-dominated, practice-centric industry to a tech-enabled, process and data-driven, multidisciplinary global industry. So even the career paths, the skills, the expectations from lawyers are changing. The shift is from legal practice to the business of delivering legal services. The startups in this field are providing a work environment to the employees which are very different from the traditional law firms. The new workplaces of the legal startups, which are providing the legal services, have flexibility and are okay with changing their employees' work processes to retain talent, increase employee engagement, and ensure happy and motivated employees. Next is transparency and efficiency. Previous slide, yes. This is now required more than ever because the clients of legal firms have become more thorough with their billing and spending on legal services. The other businesses also are looking forward to cost cutting, and therefore they expect efficiency from the legal firms. One of the primary effects and purposes of the legal tech industry is to introduce a heavier tech component into legal practice, thus changing the way lawyers do things. So these technologies will help revolutionize the legal landscape as we know it and develop new areas such as e-discovery in litigation, automated and intelligent due diligence processes and compliance and mergers and acquisition. And of course, the new thing is the smart contracts. These are the 3 examples of innovations in the legal field. The changes in legal industry thus necessitate that the budding lawyers should not restrict themselves to the domain of legal knowledge, but need is to acquire the skills needed to survive in the evolving business landscape. They must pick up some basic knowledge of business, project management, data analytics, entrepreneurial skills, so that they are prepared for a more dynamic, rewarding, and fluid career. The new breed of legal tech services, which is revolutionizing the legal landscape, are now finding business opportunities by providing legal services to the other startups, which are also booming. To give you one example in this regard is when a Bengaluru-based startup wanted legal aids as its ex-employee started a business with similar brand name and logo, and it couldn't afford the services of big law firms. Therefore, a legal tech firm, Law Ratto, came to its rescue and offered its services. Another legal firm, MyAdvo, is an online platform which connects lawyers to individuals, and similar, there are many other legal tech firms which are emerging on the block. In the next 2 slides, I will briefly take up the role of NITI Aayog in creating an enabling environment for entrepreneurs. So this is in general for all entrepreneurs, what role or what part NITI Aayog is playing. Startups and new businesses require a supportive policy environment to thrive and grow, as we all know. And one of the strategic initiatives in this regard, about which many of you must maybe already be knowing, is the Atal Innovation Mission. So this is Government of India's flagship initiative to create and promote a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship across the country. The Atal Innovation Mission encompasses several initiatives like Atal Tinkering Labs. This partners with schools and institutions to encourage creativity in the minds of young budding students and young budding entrepreneurs. The Atal Incubation Center. This is a scheme to build world-class incubators in universities, institutions, and corporates. Similarly, Mentor India is an initiative to provide hand-holding and mentorship services to the budding lawyers. This is happening in 7,000 Atal Tinkering Labs these days. Then there is the Atal New India Challenge, which supports innovators to create new product services. And there is the Atal Community Innovation Center. Now, the special feature of this particular scheme is that it is developed with the objective of serving the unserved areas of the country, like the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the aspirational districts, the northeastern regions, the tribal regions, etc. Lastly, we have the Atmanirbhar Bharat Arise program, which is designed to collaborate with central government ministries and associated industries. And the objective is to facilitate creation of innovative products and solutions. An important feature of this scheme is that the concerned ministries and government departments which are part of this program are supposed to be the first buyers of the products and solutions developed by the Indian entrepreneurs and firms. To provide support to women entrepreneurs, NITI Aayog has designed AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning enabled single integrated web platform. It works in collaboration with private and public sector organizations. And you find that all women-focused schemes and initiatives are there shared on this one platform. It also enables sharing of best practices among the women entrepreneurs. Next slide. So if we look at some positive aspects of the economy post-COVID, we can say that entrepreneurs world over have used innovation and creativity to tweak their business models and strategies to survive in this era. This effort is going to continue. A well-known name, Carl Urich from Wharton University, is also of the opinion that problem solvers with creativity will help us tide over this crisis, and their efforts would definitely lead to some business creation. So in the end, I conclude by saying that entrepreneurship is essential for growth of developing economies, and nurturing young, creative, and innovative entrepreneurs is a need for the hour. Thank you, everyone, for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful speech and a very, very informative presentation. Our last guest for the day is Mr. Tanuj Kalia. He is the founder of the very famous platform and one of its kind platform, Loctopus. The platform needs no introduction since each and every member of legal fraternity, whether they are a student or an academician, have used this platform some or the other time in their life. He has also authored a book titled Law as a Career. He has completed his BA, BSc, LLB degree from NUJS Kolkata. He is also the founding CEO of the digital platform Notice Board. I request Sir to kindly enlighten us about his experience in a legal startup and various dimensions of it. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Anmol, for the kind introduction. Professor Amar, Dr. Jha, Professor Zubair, thank you for having me. And good evening, everyone. I just wanted to start with seeing how many of you are active currently, because I know we can't see each other. So, quick question to all of you. How many of you want to start a legal startup? And your answers could be no as well, or it could be maybe, or it could be a yes. So I hope, Anmol, the chat box is enabled. Yeah, right. And you can share it with everyone so that everyone gets a bit of a wake-up call. So yes, no, maybe. Do you want to start a legal startup? So only Ria has message, and it's coming as a direct message for some reason. Amit says no, which is a very honest answer. Good to know that. So we got Anjali, Gautam, Saktivi, Tanveen, Astha, Saurabh, everyone. Tanveet says maybe, not sure. There are lots of yes responses. I've lost count, but I think there are. Niranjana says not for now. Amit has said no. Cool. Amit, would you like to be a lawyer for startups? Would that be an option worth considering? Dr. Mukta says no. Arvind says maybe, Navreet says not yet, Varsha says no. So now there's some no responses coming. Okay, awesome. Good to know that many of you are alive and active. I just wanted to do a quick check. So my presentation is going to be useful for people who want to start up. I will share some of my experiences over the last 10 years. It seems a long time, but I started in college, so it's about to be 11 years now. For those of you who are not interested, what I would request is be open, right? Be open to the possibility of entrepreneurship. And those who have replied a yes to starting up, be open to the possibility of, you know, this turning into a maybe or a yes or a no after this presentation. Okay. Because one thing which I want to point out is entrepreneurship has become very fashionable nowadays. It seems to be the cool thing to do. Trust me, it is hard. It is harder than a job for sure. It is not what Instagram tells you, which is being on a beach, sipping a pina colada and having fun. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is serious hard work. Okay. So cool. I'll start sharing my screen. Anmol, you can let me know when that's visible.
All right, so it's visible now.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Is the Q&A box enabled? I don't think so, right? Q&A box is not there. Okay. So what I would request you, Anmol, is, and everyone who's hearing this presentation, if you have any questions, please put it on the chat box. Since there are many of you and I'll be going through the PPT, I'll not have the bandwidth to note down the questions. Anmol, I request you to take down the questions and we can take some of the questions at the end of the presentation, right?
All right.
Okay, that works for you, right?
Right.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll share some of my experiences, some of my insights, questions at the end. Okay. Let's start with why should someone be an entrepreneur? I think fundamentally entrepreneurship is about solving interesting problems and contributing to the society in that manner. Loctopus, for example, solved the problem of information asymmetry way back, a decade back. By information asymmetry, I mean, there were so many conferences, moot courts, internships being done, and there was no one place aggregating it, trying to make sense of it. We could do it. And that's why, you know, we are sort of growing, we make good enough money, and we are contributing to the society. Fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about this. Okay. Another reason to be an entrepreneur can be to express your multiple potentials. Okay. Creating a work profile for yourself. It is not, you know, being dictated by an organization or being dictated by an industry. You can create your own work profile. You can create your own work setting. Okay. And what do I mean by multiple potentials? So, of course, you know, I did law from NUJ, so I was a bit interested in the law. I also relate to myself as a writer, as someone who likes to write and publish and share, and a bit of an educator as well. There would be very few fields which will allow me to explore and express these multiple things which I have. Okay. Entrepreneurship is one such thing. Entrepreneurship allows you to create that. Okay. Another fantastic thing which entrepreneurship can do is it can help you understand yourself perhaps better than a job. Okay. I'm not discounting jobs altogether. I think working with an organization can be a blessing. It can be the way you contribute to the world. But because entrepreneurship is challenging, because you are up to something new, you are inventing new processes along the way, it demands that you understand yourself better and faster. Okay. It will also help you understand people better. What are they motivated by? if someone is not performing in your team, what is the cause for that? Okay. In that way, it can be a very enriching journey. It can be a very enriching journey in terms of self-inquiry and inquiry into the world as well. Okay. It is a fun ride. There are boring days, by the way. I'm not saying it is fun all the time or all the days, but as I said, entrepreneurship is challenging. As the startup grows, so from a one person, let's say company, you move to a small team of 4 to 5, then you become a mid-sized team of, let's say 20, 30, and then you grow. At each level, there are multiple challenges. In solving that is a lot of fun, okay? Another reason to be an entrepreneur is you're building an asset. So recently, my dad was asking me that, hey, why don't you buy a piece of land somewhere, for investment purposes, as a lot of parents would tell you 10 years down the line, okay, or 20 years down the line. Entrepreneurship in itself is like, owning a piece of land or owning an asset. So it is not that you're working for someone and trading your time for some money. You are, of course, trading your time for money and for contribution, but at the same time, you are building an asset, right? A great reason to be an entrepreneur. Of course, making money and getting fame, these are byproducts of doing good work or becoming an entrepreneur. If they are your reasons to be an entrepreneur, your fundamental reasons, then you need to check on that a bit. These are always good to have as byproducts of good work being done. Okay. If you have any reasons, other reasons than this to be an entrepreneur, so all of you have said yes. If you have other reasons that you can think of, please put it on the chat box. Anmol, maybe towards the end of the presentation, you can let us know if there were any interesting reasons. Okay, cool. Here are some of the challenges that you can face as you begin your journey. First, and the most important is people start solving the wrong problem or an imaginary problem or a tiny problem. If you're solving a wrong problem, will not. If you're solving a tiny problem, you'll not make enough money for it to be sustainable for the long term. Okay. There are some startups which just have wrong timing. It can boil down to luck as well. Okay. There are ways in which you can check, you can do market research, you can start small, experiment instead of going big right at the start to see if the timing that you have is right or not. Okay. Another challenge you can face is lack of time, money, energy, and know-how. Okay. As a student entrepreneur, energy is never your concern, right? You could be on 2 Red Bulls and working throughout the day, right? Know-how in this day and time is not an issue. Whatever problem, startup related problem you have a book that solves that. You have a free YouTube, let's say, channel which solves that. Know-how is not an issue. Yet there are people who would love to mentor you, provided you can go to them with let's say good questions. Okay. Money can be an issue, but trust me, as far as online entrepreneurship goes, and I think this is what New India brings to itself, is that we have this wonderful thing with us called internet. Now we don't need huge factories or huge pieces of land to start up. We can start online. Locktopus started with 30,000 rupees. I had won 30,000 rupees as a legal blogger. It seemed a lot of money then. Okay. And we started Locktopus through that money. So money, trust me, for online entrepreneurship, if you plan to start small and then grow big, is not an issue. Okay. There can be some areas where there is too much competition. Okay. So just to give you an example, nowadays, a lot of people want to start Locktopus lookalikes or live law lookalikes, right? I'm sorry, but we are already there, right? So unless and until you're solving an interesting problem or a new problem, you might not, or let's say if you want to start an Amazon alternative. You are going to face huge amount of competition. Best of luck if you want to do that. There can also be an issue where you face too less competition. Okay, let me take a small pause here. Why do you think too less competition is an issue? So budding entrepreneurs, I want to know from you. And Anmol, you'll have to tell me some of the responses because I'm only seeing my PPT. Why do you think too less of competition is an issue? The best answer gets a free course from Octopus Law School.
Apparently, there's no response yet, but I have a response to it from my experience.
No, Anmol, so you are, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to respond. So why do you, and we can wait for 2
All
minutes.
right.
Why?
Yeah, okay, we have a.
Yeah, why do you think there is too less competition is an issue? I want a minimum of 10 responses. If we get 10 responses, the best response gets a free course from Octopus Law School. Yes. So, Anmol, can you tell me some of the responses?
I'm getting it from Saurabh Gupta. One response is that less means less opportunity, less investors.
Mm-hmm.
Then
So let's go quick, Anmol, and you can
all right.
in brief. Yeah.
Okay, I won't name the people. I'll name the responses.
No,
The one you like.
please name the people and the responses in brief. Yeah.
Saurabh Pratap saying nobody going to notice it. Pungoi Thapi, less means less innovation. Chandani Bhatt, maybe less aware about it. Anurima, because it means less competition. I will have to scroll, they're going so fast. Yeah, less competition. Okay, Sunil Kumar, less competition is less number of people involved and no one is aware. Jasmeet Kaur, less competition means no growth. Aishwarya, due to less growth and awareness. Rakshit Sharma, less competition. Navreet Kaur, because you can't explore up to mark. Sumit Jain, I'm looking for the. Okay, this is not a response. So sorry, it's talking about something else. Yeah,
sure.
that's all.
So that's fine, Anmol. So Samir, I like your response the best. Anmol, you can take Samir's email ID or send it to me after this session. And Samir, whichever course you want from Octopus Law School, congratulations. Okay, so see, the thing is, too less competition means probably, not surely, probably, there is less demand for that sort of a service. Okay, that's why people are not going there. But trust me, Octopus also faced this issue. We did not have, unfortunately, we do not have much competition still. Okay, but it can sometimes mean that there is not enough market for your product or your service. So beware. If you have a bit of competition, it can egg you. It can encourage you to innovate. It can, of course, internal motivation is important. Sometimes external motivation can help you as well. Okay. Another challenge you can face as an entrepreneur is that you can get lost in the ebbs and flows. When the startup is doing well, you can get arrogant. You can turn off your clients. You can turn off your people you are serving. I have done that. Okay, so that's I'm saying from experience. And sometimes, you can give up when things are low. When things are not moving ahead, you might say that, hey, things are not working. I need to give up. Giving up is not a bad thing. Okay, I do not agree with that famous quote which says, winners never quit and quitters never win. No, winners do quit. They quit bad projects. They quit things which are not working for them. Okay, but you should know when to quit and when to stick. It will come with experience. It will come with a bit of self-inquiry as well. Okay. Another challenge you can face is working on things which you don't like. I have never liked maths. I was a very weak student of mathematics in my school. My mother is a mathematics professor, so that was not a good story. Okay, but I had to work on things like accounts. I still find raising invoices and working on invoices I don't like doing it. But as an entrepreneur, when you're a small organization, when you're a one-person organization or 2 or 3 people, you have to do things which you don't like. Okay, it can be a challenge for some. Some of you are not numbers guys, some of you are not the creative types, but you'll have to jump in there, okay, till you have a team handling it. Right, now marketing your startup. I'm covering marketing your startup because I think we have done a good job in terms of marketing. We have not done a good job in terms of, let's say, sales, but marketing we have done good, and that's why I wanted to share some of my lessons. First thing is consistency. Consistent marketing efforts will lead to a growth, which is a growth of compound interest. So simple interest moves like this. If you can trace my finger, a compound interest grows like this, right? It takes off after a while. I've seen that happening with Loctopus. I've seen that happening with NoticeBard. I have a chart in the next slide which will explain you how this works. Second thing which has really worked for us in terms of our marketing and reach is that we care deeply for our readers. We care deeply for our learners as well at Loctopus Law School. If you see the posts on Loctopus, the way we curate it, I hope it shows that, okay? And I think readers like it, that's why they stick to the website. Search engine optimization, for all of you who are interested in online entrepreneurship, this is a huge topic. This is an industry in itself. I would request you, implore you to explore the field of search engine optimization if you're interested in online entrepreneurship, okay? I also wanted to give you an example where I say explore for at least a year, because I see some of our interns and some of the students, they have an idea, they work on it for 2, 3 months, 6 months, and then they give it up. My request is explore it for at least a year. Pranjal Kamra is the founder of Phenology. Some of you might have heard of the startup. They are doing brilliant work in terms of fintech, in terms of financial advice. And he's a 2015 graduate of HNLU Raipur. Once we were interviewing him for Loctopus, and he gave this example. By the way, his YouTube channel now is viewed by millions of people. It has million subscribers, okay? He told me till the 65th video, he was not getting views in excess of 1,000. It is, I think, the 65th or the 67th, some number like this, which took off his channel. So be consistent, be persistent. But at the same time, if things don't work, if let's say you have done 200 videos, if you've spent a couple of years and it's still not working, then it's okay to give up as well, okay? But consistency, let me tell you, as I was explaining, so this is how simple interest works. This is how compound interest works. This also works as a good financial advice. If you invest small amount of money, slowly and steadily, and consistently, it grows, your investment grows. I think all of us have read about the simple interest formula and the compound interest formula in class, maybe 5th or 6th. If you didn't do that lesson well, Google search compound interest calculator and you'll understand how things. So let me give you an example. On Loctopus, when we publish one post, let's say the first post we published on Loctopus, it gave us 100 views. The second post we published on Loctopus meant that first post was getting, let's say, 50 views. Now the second post was also getting 100 views. And slowly and steadily, when we kept on publishing quality content that is useful for law students, it kept growing. Now we have 20,000 plus posts that are published, or 20,000 plus articles that are published on Loctopus. And we have got 2 lakh plus readers every month, okay? If you're interested in online entrepreneurship, this is how things grow, okay? Some of the mistakes which we committed as in the Loctopus journey, okay? One is, most of you are law students and lawyers. Whether you are starting with your friends or with your family or with your siblings, please do have a co-founders agreement in place. Don't think that no, we are best of friends, we'll never fight, things will always, does not work, okay? Things like who owns how much of the startup, or when money starts coming, how will the profits be distributed, or who gets to take decisions on hiring and firing. These sort of decisions, they can be settled beforehand, before you start your startup, through a co-founders agreement. Take something online and tailor make it based on your requirements. You are law students. I think you will be able to do it. Okay. So there are a couple of mistakes which can sound a bit contrary to each other, but let me explain that. First thing is relying on experts. Sometimes we might feel, especially at later stages of the startups, that we need, let's say, an expert person in marketing or expert person in sales. Those people are useful. They can prevent a lot of money from being burned. They can prevent a lot of time from being burned. But as an entrepreneur, as I was explaining in the first slide, you should always be looking for solutions and innovative solutions, some of which are outside of the realm of experts. Because experts, they tend to view things in a narrow manner sometimes, okay? So relying on experts exclusively can be a mistake. Not relying on experts can also be a mistake. When we were in 5th year, I started Loctopus in 3rd year. When I was in 5th year, Loctopus lost 200 articles or 200 posts because we were not experts in technology. We were running on a Jugaadu framework and we did not have backups of the website and we lost a lot of our posts. Okay. Another thing, especially for young people, is, of course, please work hard, please put in enough amount of effort, but try to avoid burnout. You cannot, so you have a sprint, a 100-meter sprint, and you have a marathon, right? Life and entrepreneurship is a marathon. Sometimes you will need to sprint, but you can't be sprinting throughout the marathon, right? Otherwise you will burn out. Olympics are going on. You can see how 100-meter races function and how, marathons function. They function differently, okay? Awesome. Something about team building as well. Some of you, if you have already started up, I saw a couple of responses. I wanted to share some inputs on team building as well. Initial stages, hire when it hurts. When you can't do the thing, let's say there are too many posts to be published, you hire a content manager. There are too many clients coming to you, you hire a salesperson. Okay, when you can't do things on your own, that is when you hire. When you grow big, when you have money to spare, then you can hire for potential growth as well. Okay. Some things which I see, young co-founders doing is they get other people as co-founders without really checking on their interest or their level of commitment to that idea. I always ask them, hey, can you take that person as an employee first, or take that person as a freelancer first? And then if they're committed, then take them as co-founders, okay? A couple of things which you can keep in mind. Skills, of course. A person should have a skill. The right person in your team should have the right skills. Having the right cultural fit is also important. Are you a startup which believes in fast growth, or do you believe in slow growth, organic growth? If there is no cultural fit there, it might cause problems in the future, okay? When you grow your startup and when you hire team members, delegation becomes important. So for example, in early stages of Loctopus, I had to delegate the curation of posts or the curation of articles to someone. It can sometimes feel like it can be a bit scary. Can the other person do things as well as I am able to do? Or, you might have doubt, will they be that much careful, etc., etc. So a good framework to delegate things is, you should first, of course, do things yourself, some of the things, not everything. But you do that thing and you become a fair bit of an expert in that. And then you do it together. So from I do, it becomes we do it together. So let's say you sit along with the person, or let's say in these times over a Zoom call, you screen share, and then you try to do the same thing on your own together, right? And you give active mentorship, active feedback, so that that person is doing that thing competently. And then you move to you do as in the person does that, okay? So you have now given most of the responsibility and authority to that person. In delegation, never abdicate. Abdicate means never give up the thing entirely. You should have periodic checks or periodic mentorship structure into your team building process, okay? This is a question which I sometimes get, and after this, I'll end the presentation. How to handle adversity and doubt while starting up? Okay. One question which I get a lot is, what about parents? See, parents want your good. That is crystal clear. And when they are only worried because they see something new and they are worried about your safety, basically, right? Financial safety, let's say. When they see conventional markers of success, your startup gaining a bit of traction, you earning a bit of money, they will come around and they will become your biggest supporters. Okay. If you can see these two circles, they always help me make decisions. There is a larger circle called the circle of concern, and there are many things in the circle of concern. Let's say pandemic was in circle of concern. Donald Trump was circle of concern, right? Or there could be many other things. But not everything is in the circle of influence, things which you can influence directly. So in pandemic, you can't really influence everything that is happening, but what you can do is wear masks, sanitize, maintain social distancing, and encourage others to do so. So focus on things which you can influence, and having this sort of a diagram, this sort of a framework helps in your startup journey. Okay. Here are some books and readings which I would like to suggest. If you are interested, if you are a reader, if you are a learner, as ma'am was saying early on, good entrepreneurs, they are curious, they are learners. Here are some books, some couple of YouTube channels as well, which I have found useful. You can probably take a screenshot of this and use it for your purposes. That's about it from my side. Thank you everyone for listening to me. And thank you for inviting me over. It's always great to interact with people interested in entrepreneurship. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful presentation, and me being personally interested in entrepreneurship, I really got to know a lot of dimensions of it. We will now have our question and answer session here. And the first question that we have is, what is the role of cyber resilience in legal entrepreneurship? I would request our experts to give their comments on this question. I would repeat the question. What is the role of cyber resilience in legal entrepreneurship?
I think cyber resilience can play a very important role in legal entrepreneurship. As the remaining two speakers have told us, see, patience is the name of the game. But for being patient, you also have to be supported. You can be patient till kingdom time comes. But if your preparation levels are not up to the mark, if your data goes out of your hands, if you become a victim of a cybersecurity breach, or your own employees, your co-founders take away your data, start up a completely separate kind of an initiative like yours, then whatever you would want to do may not necessarily be seeing fruition. So somewhere down the line, I think it's got to do with backups, first of the mind and then of materials. So first, let's have this impression that, look, not everything will be hunky-dory. There will be challenges. And let's learn to accept that particular challenges coming forward. Second is, once we have that mindset, then we are not going to be disturbed. I know I'm going to be attacked. So what if I get attacked? The world does not come crumbling down. The sun will still rise tomorrow. We need to have that mindset. Therefore, having in my first and foremost, protecting my data, having adequate backups becomes crucial. Also, your confidential information, your trade secrets must be in a very small core group. It should not be littered around onto the internet or on computer systems and platforms. You do not know who's your friend, who's your enemy. And today it's all about your data. And number three, it's important that you should have appropriate mechanisms to safeguard your devices and also re-engineer your minds. Look, when there is going to be so many cybersecurity breaches, it will be a given fact, maybe I'm very lucky, and that these breaches never happened to me in my entire lifetime. But I may be one of a million or a billion kind of a matter. The chances are that once I'm a legal entrepreneur, once people get to know about me, my work, they could potentially target me, they could potentially target my data, and they could potentially be interfering in your day-to-day activities. So it's all about trying to just have a new mindset. Somewhere down the line, 10 years down the line, people used to not report cybercrime, saying, oops, what will people say? My reputation will go for a 6. Today, now the world has changed. We take it as a given, yes, you will be attacked. And if you're attacked, so what? You're not alone. Millions of the people have been attacked. But are your crown jewels safe? Have you done your appropriate protections properly? Because if you don't do that and people start suing you left, right, and center, then there's going to be a big challenge, because then potentially your plans of your legal entrepreneurship startups may potentially be jeopardized. So it's all about changing mindsets. And as Tanuj rightly said, people will slowly start coming around. The change has to begin from you. And once you start realizing that the change is yours, yes, you will find a lot of opposition. But then that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? If everything was a cakewalk, then entrepreneurship would not at all be exciting, nor it actually will be encouraging. But the very fact that you can face adversity on its face and tell them, look, I have the gut and the determination to get forward. And I have the requisite mindset, the planning, the resources, and the approaches, as also the teams, to go ahead beyond this adversity. That will be the crucial stuff. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. We have another question, which is focused on failure of teaching tools to budding entrepreneurs. This is coming from my personal experience and a lot of my colleagues we are being taught law in law schools very well, but when it comes to amalgamating the knowledge of law and business, like, okay, I know the law, but how do I create a business out of it is something that we are not taught. So how can we go about failures of teaching tools in the for the purpose of legal entrepreneurship?
Anmol, if I got it correctly, it is failure of teaching tools, right?
Right.
See, I think something which legal education in general has sorted it out for itself is we have compulsory internships throughout the 5 years. If you check any other stream, engineering, for example, they only have internships probably at the 4th year, though I think things are changing for good. So internships are a great way to learn practical niceties of law, get into a bit of research, a bit of drafting. When you work with lawyers and with law firms, a bit of entrepreneurial spirit, because you're working with people who have started their own organizations. That also comes with it. So internships are a great way. And I would request students to sort of generate their own micro entrepreneurship possibilities inside of the law school. I'll give you an example. NUJS Calcutta is a very student-driven college. So our societies, our clubs, be it the literary society or the debating society, the moot court society, the placement society, they're very student-driven, faculty mentored, student-driven. Because students get these opportunities, of managing an entire project, of managing deliverables, which is, let's say, taking care of placements for an entire batch, or organizing a moot court, a big international moot court on their own. It gives them entrepreneurial skills, and students can do this within themselves, start clubs, start societies. So a lot of responsibilities, I think students need to start taking with themselves as well.
So from what I understand, it is a partnership between the students and the institution about inciting that sense of entrepreneurship in the students.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir. We have one more question. Is the existing monopoly in EdTech by a few companies a big obstacle for new entrepreneurs? This question is for Tanuj, sir.
See, talking about monopolies, the job of entrepreneurs is to disrupt monopolies. Career Launcher used to have a monopoly over, let's say, the education space. They wanted to get into online education. They were too slow to move. And now you have Byju's, you have an academy taking that up, right? Even in the legal stream, I don't think, there are 3 or 4 good players. I don't think it's a monopoly. For entrepreneurs, it's always a good challenge to, think of monopoly and try to disrupt it. And yes, it can be a challenge as well, because in the internet world, if we talk about any industry or any space, you'll have largely 1 or 2 players. So Ola and Uber, Zomato and Swiggy, right? Perhaps it will be a bit arrogant to say, but let's say Livelog and Loctopus in bar and bench. Okay, so internet tends towards monopolies, and people then, if they find a platform reliable and good, they move towards that. It can be a bit of a challenge, but again, it's an opportunity as
well. Thank you so much, sir. That I suppose the answer we have got our answers. Our audience has got their answers. I would now request Dr. Anuradha Jha ma'am to give a vote of thanks to our esteemed guests. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anmol. Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, respected Dean, sir, of University School of Law and Legal Studies, Registrar, sir, our most valued invited guests, Dr. Pawan Duggal, sir, Dr. Meenal Sharma, ma'am, Dr. Tanuj Kalia, sir, dear participants, our faculty colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of Legal Entrepreneurship and Incubation Cell, University School of Law and Legal Studies, extend a hearty vote of thanks to all our esteemed speakers for gracing the event and sharing with us their findings and opinions today. We are grateful to Dr. Pawan Duggal for demonstrating an eye for detail to bridge the gap between law practice and law academies. I may like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Meenal Sharma for providing insight to the topic entrepreneurship in evolving business environment. I'm also grateful to Mr. Tanuj Kalia for his analysis of roadblocks and solutions in regard to legal entrepreneurship with lessons for new generation of lawyers. We are all inspired by these. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to the university fraternity, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, our Registrar, sir, who have always extended great support for innovation and experimental learning, and their administrative support. I would like to express sincere gratitude to our Dean, sir, Professor Amarpal Singh Ji, for his efforts and encouragement, our faculty colleagues, and to the coordinator of the cell, Dr. Zubair Ahmed Khan. I would like to thank Dr. Shaktivel for extending technical help. A hearty thanks also extend to our student coordinators and volunteers, Ms. Anmol, Hemant, Ankit, Anu, Aman, and Vani, for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this event. Last, but not the least, I'd like to congratulate and thank all the registered participants for making this event a success. Please visit our Facebook and Twitter page for more updates and events in the near future. I sum up with the words of John F. Kennedy. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Thank you. Over to you, Anmol.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We now conclude the event, and I would also like to thank all our guests for their enlightening comments.
Thank you, Anmol.
Thank you,
Sir, over to you, AP Singh sir, your final comments.
No, I was just watching with a lot of interest. Everybody is so engrossed in the 3 presentations, despite the fact that quite a big, long session we had. Everybody was glued to everything. So, Once again, I put on record my sincere gratitude and thanks to our esteemed speakers, Dr. Pawan Duggal, Dr. Jagtap, Meenal Sharma Jagtap, and Mr. Tanuj Kalia for being with us. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. We close this program, sir. You can log out now, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Pawan sir. Thank you, Tanuj.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ankit, we can wait. We can share the this